Welcome, everybody. Technical difficulties, but I'm back. My internet died. I had to reboot my computer, so sorry about that. Starting at 6:07 p.m. today instead of 6 p.m. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. This is John Aravosis with the Aravosis Report, joining you from Washington, D.C., where we talk nightly, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, about the latest news from Ukraine. Let me get TikTok rolling. Sorry about the delay. Like I said, my internet was bad. Like, just fitzed on me. Wasn't working. And then, of course, my computer did an update too, which was insane. But all right, TikTok's rolling now. All right. As always, introduce yourself, say where you're from, and we'll wait a second for the TikTokers to join us. Woo! That was a bit crazy. Man, wasn't the Russians. It was just my internet being goofy. Hey, TikTokers. Sorry, my internet was fitzing out. So we're starting a little late today. All right, Joe Rogan. What do you mean? Here I am. Here I am. Hey, sorry guys. The internet was being goofy today, so I had to reboot my computer. So we'll wait a second for introduce yourselves, where you guys are all from. And I will start the show in about a minute, just waiting for critical mass of folks. But since we started late, it's starting pretty good on time now. Oh my. Yeah, sorry about that. Like I said, my internet just goofed and I had to reboot my computer, and then my computer obviously wanted to update something, and I was like, no, con. So it was a little crazy. Anyway, welcome everybody. I'm about to start the show here. I am here. Thank you, Frate, for that. So, yeah, let me get started here. So, welcome everybody. The way this always works is I do about half an hour, maybe half an hour or so of the show, giving you guys the latest news, my take on it, what I think matters. And then the second half of the show, we take your questions or your comments too, because I like kind of your guys' feedback of what you think is actually going on, whether it matters, whether it doesn't. So we'll start with that. To submit questions on TikTok, and you can submit them now even, go to my profile. There's the Q&A link. Click that. You can put questions there or your comments, and I'll get to those once we're at that part of the show. The rest of you obviously use the comment box at the bottom of the screen. I do appreciate when you guys can do gifts on TikTok or the super chats or super stickers on YouTube. I do this full time, and I've been doing it for free since the war broke out. So I've been trying to make a living doing this. So your guys' support makes a big difference because it's all the support I'm getting. So thank you all for that. All right, let's dive right in. So thank you, L, for the heart there. So we know about this horrific earthquake in Turkey today. It was one main earthquake, I guess 7.8 on the Richter scale, followed by several. Well, they were saying aftershocks initially, but then I was reading they may not have even been aftershocks. They may have been additional quakes, meaning if you look at the map, it was really kind of interesting and horrifying. A number of different faults come together, like just on Turkey or just east of Turkey. But these fault lines, coming up from Lebanon, coming from Europe, I mean, it's really crazy. So Turkey is in a horrific place. Apparently, they get shocks every few months, but they're very mild. They could be a 5 on the Richter scale or whatever. This was a 7.8. Now, the thing to remember on earthquakes, and then we're going to get back into Ukraine here, is earthquakes are a logarithmic scale. Now, rather than getting into all the math of it, which I couldn't even explain to you now, but the idea of logarithmic scale is the curve, instead of like a line going up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that a 6 to a 7 is an increase of 1, a 7 to an 8 is an increase of 1. It doesn't work that way. A logarithmic scale is something like 1, 10, 100. So when you go from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 on a logarithmic scale, on the earthquake scale, it's actually 10 times stronger. I mean, horrifically stronger. So this thing being a 7.8, massively. I mean, yeah, exactly. Cheetah Sue is saying, or Alita Sue is saying on TikTok, astronomical increase. So in any case, the Ukrainians said today that they are hoping to send several dozen emergency workers to Turkey to help the Turks clear the rubble. I don't know if you saw the videos today. I mean, really, I couldn't put them on TikTok. Horrific videos of just entire apartment buildings just coming down. I mean, honestly, it looked like the World Trade Center coming down, or one of those videos of controlled demolition where literally this entire 15-story building just collapsing. And I mean, people inside, forget it. Really bad. So anyway, the Ukrainians are sending dozens of rescue workers, which is really particularly generous considering Ukraine needs all the rescue workers it can get for its own buildings. Meanwhile, a host on Russian state television tonight, mind you, nothing happens on Russian. Russia is a dictatorship now. It was never a democracy, but now it's a dictatorship. And nothing happens on Russian TV that the Russian government doesn't want to have happen. Well, a host on Russian TV tonight started complaining that Turkey was a member of NATO and said that the Russians shouldn't be giving Turkey, thank you, Queen, for the heart, shouldn't be giving Turkey anything. We should be giving it to our boys at the front. And then maybe at the end, if there's a little bit left over, maybe we'll give it to the Turks, but it's doubtful. I mean, just, I've said this before. There is something culturally with Russia that is very different. I mean, they're not a European country. I don't know what they are, but they're not a European country. They don't come from that cultural tradition. And there's just, crazy stuff like this. That's just like, man, in any case. The number of Russian troops killed and wounded in Ukraine, there was a new estimate today that the New York Times reported on. You'll recall that as of November, the last time we had an actual official estimate come from the US government was back in November, when the number was put at conservatively around 100,000 Russian troops injured or killed. Now, they combine those together. They typically they give a combined, because the idea, thank you, Bonnie, for the pause there. The idea is even if you're injured or killed, either one, you're out of combat. You can't fight anymore. So it doesn't really matter if you're killed or not. Actually, what's interesting is, in terms of a military perspective, it's almost a bigger pain in the butt for the military to have to deal with injured, because, and I was reading this actually at the beginning of the war, in normal militaries where they care about their injured, each injured soldier has a soldier taking care of him or her, right? I mean, that's the first thing happening. Then, thank you, Andrew, for the hat. Then, so in other words, you've got like a medic helping. You've got soldiers helping transport them, right? Thank you, Elle, for that. For Lucy, I was going to say thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Elle, for Lucy. You're going to have the soldiers transporting them. You've got in other words, carrying them to the transport itself, doctors taking care of them. It is much less efficient in terms of the strain that you put on the military to have an injured soldier than a dead soldier. Obviously, dead is a lot worse in terms of a moral position here, but any case, nonetheless. So the latest numbers were in November about 100,000 Russian soldiers killed or injured. That was conservative. We were saying, I believe it was about 30,000 killed and maybe 70,000 injured, okay? The New York Times mentioned that, off the record, U.S. officials would say that the real number was probably more like 120,000. It's frankly very hard to calculate because the Russians aren't telling us. And, you're trying to extrapolate how many killed. Well, now American and Western officials are saying, this was reported in the New York Times today, that the Russian killed and wounded are approaching 200,000. Now, if you extrapolate based on where they were before, where almost a third of Russian troops were killed. If you're talking almost 200,000, then you're talking 60,000 Russian troops dead and another 140,000 injured. Keep in mind, if we're talking 60,000 dead Russian troops, 14,500 was the number of Russian troops killed in Afghanistan over a 10-year period. Oh, thank you, Addie. I've never seen that one before. And Biofuel Guy and Jesse, all the TikTok gifts. Thank you, guys. Afghanistan, over 10 years in the 1980s, 14,500 Russians were killed, Russian troops. And that was considered a massive disaster for Russia, okay? 14,500 in 10 years. They've lost 60,000 approximately, we think, in 1 year. I mean, this is a really horrific number, but this is a dictatorship, and the people, don't get information. They don't get the news. And, I was reading one article. I don't even know which article today, but one of the articles today I was reading said that U.S. estimates were that the Russians would need to, basically the Russians could lose hundreds of thousands of men, like dead, I believe it was, and it wouldn't affect the Russian people, but something like over 500,000 dead would finally start to upset the Russian people, and they'd finally, in other words, start to actually threaten Putin's government, because the people would go, what's going on? I mean, that's a far cry from where they are now, which might be 60,000 dead. Ukraine. So Ukraine did not replace its defense minister today. That was something that almost happened today. You might, if you've been paying attention, I don't mean that in an obnoxious way. I mean, if you've been paying close attention, you might have seen that there have been a lot of stories about corruption in Ukraine, basically meaning people crack me up. Sorry, I mean, oh, thank you, inspired woman. I haven't seen that. That's cute. I haven't seen you. You have a pink theme to the gifts I can see. Thank you for that. Um, the Ukraine has been cracking down on corruption in the last several weeks, especially, and they've arrested former top officials. They fired a lot of former top officials, a lot of them in the Defense Department, their Defense Ministry, but also other places. And oops, adjusting my shirt here. One of the a number of the corruption scandals were in the Defense Department, the Ministry of Defense, and finally got into trouble the actual Minister of Defense himself, not necessarily because he did anything wrong. We don't know. But at the very least, there were so many problems in his department that Zelensky was going to fire him today. And middle of the day, we found out that the guy was keeping his job for now, but that Zelensky told him he basically has to fire all of his top staff, has to be gone, and all of their people. Because basically, thank you, Andrew, for that. What is interesting is, thank you, Biofuel Guy. I was watching some of the news shows yesterday about this, and there was concern. Interestingly enough, okay, thank you, Natalia. There has been concern in the West about corruption in Ukraine because there's a lot of corruption in that area in general. Russia has even more corruption. Thank you, Newton. But corruption isn't a reason to not stop a genocide. You can't really pick where your genocides happen. You know what I mean? So we still have to help these guys, but the Ukrainians have been clamping down, which is great. But interestingly enough, considering Western governments are the ones who have been raising concerns about corruption in Ukraine, it was a lot of the folks in the West who were concerned about getting rid of the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, even though he had so many scandals in his agency, because they know him. He has lots of very good contacts. Thank you, Ken, for that. He has lots of very good content. Oh, that was funny. Sorry. Thank you, Bonnie. There's a new gift on TikTok that's a rose that you're holding in your teeth. Okay, so that made me laugh. I hadn't seen that before. It was very, thank you, Nurse Boyer. Literally, you're talking and there's like a rose in your teeth. That's really cute. That was funny. Oh my God. They crack me up when they update things and you don't quite know they're going to update that. Of course, we're always talking about serious stuff, but hey, it helps break the mood a little, and I appreciate the support. The Ukrainian defense minister had such good contacts, or has them, with the defense ministers across NATO, that there was real concern that this was not the time that we need to be getting rid of this guy. And you also have just the issue of your agency overall. Look at all the turmoils Russia's been going through, right? I mean, they've replaced the head of the war. They haven't replaced the minister of defense, but they've replaced the guy in charge of the war 4 or 5 times now, at least. So in any case, I was watching some of the military experts saying they weren't really sure if this was wise, switching out the defense minister at this point in the war, that it's a little risky, worrying about the Russians having a big offensive, possibly as early as 2 to 3 weeks from now. So in any case, it looks like Zelensky relented and told him at the very least he had to clean shop the minister of defense. So that's good. Please do follow and subscribe. I always forget to mention that to you guys. The first of 4 Leopard tanks from Canada arrived in Poland today on its way to Ukraine. The Ukrainians, where is this? I had a little thing on the update here. Yeah, Ukraine is going to be in, Ukraine actually began. Thank you, Magical Photo. Ukraine, and who is it? And Nipaz Buvna? Thank you, Loyalty. Oh, you guys crack me up with those flowers. So the Canadians are sending 4 of the Leopard tanks. Only one's arrived in Poland, that is. But the Ukrainians began training today on the Leopard tanks. We don't know where the training was taking place, but the Ukrainian Defense Ministry announced it today. Thank you, Meg, that the training at least has begun, which is a good thing. Ukraine has promised that it will not use longer range missiles to hit Russian territory, and will only be targeting Russian occupied territory in Ukraine. This came in response to the American government announcing on Friday, Thursday or Friday, I'm forgetting which, but we announced a new weapons package, a military package of around 2.1 billion or so for Ukraine. Thank you for the Corgi Flower Lady. And included in that, 2.175 billion. Included in that military package is a bomb called a GLSDB, ground launched small diameter bomb, and it is basically a bomb that is associated with a missile. So it's a bomb, but it's a missile bomb. Okay, so it's something that they shoot out of a HIMARS. It can be adapted to shoot in the HIMARS, which are the rocket systems that we gave the Ukrainians, right? Or I say rocket system, the system to shoot rockets. I should be more precise. Thank you, Dawn, for that. The system to shoot rockets. And this new GLSDB can shoot from the HIMARS, which is great. But unlike the weapons we've already given Ukraine in the past, the previous weapons we've been giving Ukraine for the HIMARS can only go around 60 miles maximum or 100 kilometers. These new GLSDB bombs, which is kind of redundant because the B means bomb, but you get the idea, can go around 94 miles, so almost twice the distance, 94 miles or 150 kilometers. So that's a big deal. Now, as you may recall, one of the reasons the Americans have been giving for their concern about, or our concern about giving the Ukrainians, thank you, Biofuel Guy, about giving the Ukrainians weapons that can shoot farther is this notion that, oh, but these weapons could hit Russia, and we don't want Ukraine attacking Russia in Russia. Oh my God, which is a BS argument because Ukraine borders Russia. Okay. I mean, I will show you handy dandy map. This is Ukraine, right? All of this is Russia. This is all the Russian border, all of this. Most of it occupied by Ukraine still. All Ukraine has to do is pick up a rock and throw it a foot, and they're hitting the Russian border. So the idea that we're giving weapons that can hit Russia, we already give them bullets can hit Russia, right? Grenades can hit Russia. So it's a BS argument. In any case, I think it's smart of the Ukrainians to promise that they're not going to use these new bombs that we're giving them to hit Russia, meaning to attack territory in the Russia itself, right? Not territory in Ukraine the Russians have stolen, because the U.S. clearly wanted them to say it, so they said it. Good for them, right? In any case, I'll tell you really quick. So one of the other ways you guys can help me out is I've got a Discord set up, discord.aravosis.com. Basically, it's kind of a chat place. It takes a while to figure out, but I finally figured it out. And we can we hang there after hours. We'll try to go after the show tonight if this doesn't go too long. But I've also got auctions going on there. Oh, I've got some pictures I can show you. I was very excited. So we have, hang on here, the auctions there. We've been they've got an auction feature, which is really cool. And I've been taking the auction proceeds, cool stuff from Ukraine, basically. So we've gotten, I'll show you some of the stuff in a minute, actually. A lot of cool stuff from Ukraine that my friend Vlad buys and then sends to me, and I auction off. And we've been taking the proceeds from that. Half of it I've been using to support my work because I do this for free, and I've been doing it full time. So somebody's got to pay my mortgage and pay for my dog food. And the other half we've been channeling back into Ukraine. Well, Vlad sent me a couple pictures today. This picture, first of all, is some Ukrainian Air Force troops, and they are holding some of our auction proceeds went to get them 15 batteries for their walkie-talkies because they need backup batteries because, as you know, it's the power is horrific in Ukraine. They've only got 8 hours of power a day, and it keeps shifting back and forth. Thank you, Max. So some of the money went for that. Vlad also sent me, hang on, I may be able to pull this, although it's kind of hard to see the video, but Vlad also sent me a video.
Есть, смотри, что-то там было. ПК сработал. Есть. Повторить. Повторить.
You can't understand, you don't even need to understand. That was, I put it in the Discord. That's a video of Ukrainian troops in Bakhmut. Okay. Bakhmut, which is the big battle that's going on right now. The biggest battle happening right now in the war. Yeah. I got my new iPhone at Christmas. It was 3 years old. I always wait 3 years. I'm very frugal. I wait 3 years and then I buy a new phone. Thank you. Who was that with the gift there? Thank you, Morning Together, for the gift. Bakhmut is over here in the east, okay? And it's the biggest battle happening right now, okay? The Russians are trying to take the town from Ukrainians. Ukrainians are still holding it, but it's getting dicey for the Ukrainians. Well, Vlad told me today that our auction proceeds helped buy several drones for the Ukrainian troops in Bakhmut. we also were able to buy them Starlink internet, and they were using the drones and the Starlink internet to hit a Russian storage depot for their armaments. If you that video, I mean, I'd have to put it up to the screen for you to see. It basically was the drone footage of the storage facility blowing up and getting hit, which was kind of cool. Thank you. Thank you for the gift there, Louis, because some of our auction money helped do that. So we've also done a ton. I mean, lately we've been doing a little more military stuff. We've done a ton of humanitarian aid with the auction money. Oh my God, we got supplies for people with disabilities who were living on the front lines of the war. Literally, their town was involved in the war. This disability home that we got supplies for. So we've been doing lots of different stuff. We bought a bus and got refugees out of Mariupol, which is that city that was just getting, well, the Russians are still occupying it, but we brought them medicine and snuck people out. So we've been doing lots of stuff. Anyway, the two things I've got auctioning off right now, a number of things. One is the Azovstal steel bracelets. I've only got 3 of these left, by the way. So this is one of 3 left. These are these really cool bracelets the Ukrainian government made to honor the 2,000 Ukrainian troops who were holed up for 14 months. Remember, for 14 months, I'm sorry. Thank you, Natalia. For 2 months, 2,000 troops holed up for 2 months against 14,000 Russian troops. So 2,000 Ukrainians, 14,000 Russians, and they held these guys at bay. The Ukrainian government took the last batch of steel they had from the plant and made these bracelets. Oops, I'll show you. That are, you got to get just the right angle, and you can probably see that there's a trident on there. It's kind of hard to see on TikTok. You guys can see the trident. And there are these cool bracelets. Anyway, we've got 3 of them left. They're not making them anymore. We're auctioning that. And I've got my very final, I swear we're getting back to the show in a sec. The last commemorative stamp. I'm keeping it safe in a bag. These are the Russian warship Go F Yourself stamps, commemorative stamps. This is it. I have no more commemoratives. I mean, we're going to see if we can get more. Thank you, Paramarine. But we are out of commemorative stamps. You can tell just by looking. I don't want to get them dirty, but it's a soldier standing on the side giving the finger to the Russian ship. It's really, I mean, they were great. Absolutely great. But it's the last one we've got. Basically, folks should be able to help you. Hopefully in the comments, maybe somebody can help some of the guys figure out Discord. But basically, when you go to the Discord, you have to find the README section. You click the README, you read it. On the bottom, there's a big button that says, click me that you agree to the terms. Once you click the button, then the rest of the Discord shows up. Then you'll see the auctions, etc. So give it a check. All right, guys, let me get back to the news. Wall Street Journal, this is a bad story. Moscow and Tehran, so the Russians and the Iranians, are moving ahead with their plan to build a drone plant in Russia. The plant reportedly could make at least 6,000 Iranian-designed drones for the war in Ukraine. That's bad. I mean, I don't even think the Russians have used 6,000 drones yet. I think they've only had a few thousand. So this obviously would be bad news. Now, what's interesting is, listen to this at the end. The source for the Wall Street Journal story are, quote, officials from a country aligned with the U.S. I'm going to take a wild guess what country that is. It's okay. It doesn't have to be Israel, but it's probably Israel. Israel is probably none too thrilled right now that the Iranians are having better and better relationships with the Russians, especially this kind of business defense relationship, right? Not good. I mean, the Israelis have been really skirting a fine line trying to keep their relations good with the Russians because Israel basically bombs Iranian well, maybe not troops, Iranian influenced troops, Iranian surrogates in Syria. And in order to do that, they need the Russians okay, because the Russians pretty much control Syria. So the Russians look the other way. They let the Israelis bomb. And this is the reason, at least we believe, that Israel has not been very good about standing up to Russia and helping Ukraine in the war. Gonna get interesting now that Russia is having this kind of a tight military relationship with Tehran, because it means, what are the Iranians getting back from the Russians? If the Iranians are giving the Russians their drone technology to build a plant, are the Russians giving the Iranians some of the military technology that they're getting from the, from the Iranian, in Ukraine or elsewhere, right? If you're Israel, that is not something you're very happy about. Per the Kyiv Independent, Ukraine's intelligence is claiming that on February 6th, Russia was prepared. So February 6th is today. Russia is prepared to mobilize 300,000 to 500,000 troops to sustain a major offensive in the Donbas, which is eastern Ukraine, and possibly in Zaporizhia as early as this spring or summer. So spring or summer means they're putting it more back to March, April, maybe even May or June. Okay. Donbas, I think it's one of those, it's like saying the Midwest in the US. Donbas is the name for this region out here. I say it's like saying the Midwest, meaning Donbas isn't a state, but it's two states combined. Don't know the history. Yulia or somebody else could tell us what the history of the name is, but the Donbas is basically these two provinces. So you've got Luhansk province here, and you've got Donetsk province here, and combined, they're the Donbas. The thinking is that these two provinces are what Putin really want. I mean, he controls almost 100% of Luhansk, which is the one to the east, but he only controls maybe 50% of Donetsk, which is the one a little bit further west. So the thinking from the Ukrainians, the latest thinking is they think Putin could try to mobilize as many as 300 to 500,000 additional troops beyond the mobilization they did previously, and that they would either be, or a combination of, possibly using them to take all of Donbass, so the rest of Donetsk, basically, right? There's only 50% that the Russians control now, and Zaporizhia as well. So Zaporizhia is the next province over, more or less here. The Russians control maybe 50% or I don't even 60% of this as well, but they don't control all of it. So the thinking is the Russians are basically going to try to fortify, not even fortify. This is the area the Russians have invaded this time that they still hold more or less. This is what they invaded in 2014 that they hold, Crimea. But this province and this province, they only hold about 50%. So the thinking is they're going to pour their troops in to try to get 100% of these two provinces. And that way they can really cement, the idea is that they would try to cement that whole stretch of land, basically, so that they wouldn't have to give it up. Now, let me have a quick sip. Let me see here. A written report by the deputy head of Ukrainian intelligence clarifies that the predicted 300 to 500,000 troops that Russia will likely mobilize would be in addition to the hundreds of thousands of conscripts drafted during the fall campaign. So that's what we were saying. Wall Street Journal says that China is providing technology to Moscow's military needs for the war effort. Despite international sanctions, the customs record shows Chinese state-owned defense companies shipping navigation equipment, jamming technology, and jet fighter parts. That's really bad. Jet fighter parts to sanctioned Russian government-owned defense companies. Somebody had asked a couple of weeks ago whether we had any evidence about them actually doing something like this. Well, now we do. According to the New York Times, 2 months after banning most crude oil from Russia, the European Union yesterday expanded the embargo to Russian supplies of diesel and gasoline, which are the lifeblood of transportation. I also have a Patreon page set up, just if you guys want to check it out. It's patreon.com/Aravosis. I just realized I may not have told you the address for my Discord. All of my links on TikTok, you can find all of my links in my profile. Just go to the Linktree link, and you'll find my Discord, my Patreon, my PayPal, you name it. And for you guys, just use Aravosis Report. That works really well too. Seriously, Aravosis.com for you all. You guys can use Aravosis.com too, but I actually give you the links in the TikTok. But Patreon is a neat way. I always like to make a pitch for Patreon for myself, but also for others. It's a neat way that you can help creators by giving them a set donation every month. So basically, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you want. And you set it recurring and it keeps going until you cancel it. And it's nice because as a creator, you actually can count on getting X amount of money each month. So at least, you know that there's a core amount of money coming. It's very helpful. So please do check that out, patreon.com/Aravosis. And if you are a $5 or more contributor, you can also link it to my Discord, and it gives you extra benefits, such as probably the biggest benefit right now for the lower donors is being able to use our VIP auction in addition to our regular auction. We have a public auction, and then we have a VIP auction just for the donors, just to give them a little bit of an advantage since they are contributing, right? Anyway, I will move on. In a record display of financial support, Norway has pledged 75 billion crowns or 6 billion pounds to Ukraine over 5 years. I believe this is a little over $7 billion. A couple more stories, 2 more stories, and then we're ready to go to questions. Bloomberg, the U.S. is preparing to double the tariff on Russian steel. This is one of those things that I kind of looked at and went, why hadn't we done it already? But apparently there were concerns about repercussions, even though we don't get a lot of our steel in the U.S. from Russia. The number, I think, did I have it here? I was going to copy it down. I think the percentage of steel wasn't that much to start. It might have been 10% of our steel imports came from Russia. Now it's 3%. But I think there wasn't really clear. China and Russia are the 2 big exporters of steel. So at least for us. So I think the concern was we really would have hurt our own companies and, didn't want to cut that back. But anyway, now we're putting tariffs on that. And finally, according to a Swiss, I believe a Swiss paper. Thank you, Chaz, AK, for that. I'm guessing this is a Swiss-German paper. It was quoted by, God, I'm not even sure who quoted. This could have been from Sky News, or I could have gotten it from the Kiev Independent. But Die Sonntag Zeitung. Sonntag, I think, is Sunday. Zeitung, is it Swiss? One of you must know. Die Sonntag Zeitung. I think it's Swiss. Either way, Patriarch Kirill, who is the head of the Russian church, corrupt as hell. He's the guy who heads the Russian church and is basically, is it German? Okay. Well, it could be Swiss German. That's why I'm asking. It's German. That he's the Russian church head who basically is totally in cahoots with Putin. And I mean, just kind of corrupt as hell. He, according to that paper, he spied on Switzerland for the Soviet Union in the 1970s, according to declassified archives that they got their hands on. How's that for wild? I mean, anyway, what a jerk. It's not like you're spying for freedom or something. He was spying for the Soviet freaking Union. Thank you positively for that. Just unbelievable. All right, that's it for the news. We will go to do the questions and answers now. I've also got a store set up. Check out our store, store.aravosis.com. You can also check it out via our links. Thank you, Marcy, for that. So for questions on TikTok, submit the questions via the Q&A link in my profile. That makes it easiest. It is Swiss. That's what I thought. Okay. I thought it was Swiss. It's Swiss German. We know it's German, but you've got to keep in mind Switzerland has multiple official languages, German, French, Italian, and what is it? Romanche, I think. Am I right on that? So that just because you see German, don't assume, and also there's Austria too. Don't assume it's Germany. Anyway, who knows? All right, so let's jump to this. Hang on a second. Put on my glasses. I did not hear that. Alec is saying a Russian propagandist supposedly was assassinated or almost assassinated over the weekend. I don't know. Being in Newsweek is a little questionable. Unfortunately, I saw it in Newsweek. Newsweek used to be an excellent Newsweek used to be one of the Swiss. Okay, good. Used to be one of the top publications in the world. Wonderful news magazine, and it's not anymore. I don't know what they are anymore. Clearly, somebody bought the name, but you can't trust them anymore. They throw together stories from like everywhere, and they don't. The thing is, they don't like. There's just no vetting. I saw stuff on Newsweek that was just totally wrong that I fell for once, and I'm never going to believe it again. So yeah, I would not trust Newsweek, but what do you do? BBC's good. New York Times is good. CNN's good. Irish Times, good. All right. TikTok questions. Let me go to the TikTok questions. And please do keep the gifts coming. I appreciate it. Let's see here. TikTok Q&A. Thank you, Alan, for the llama. That llama cracks me up. How does the Ukraine war affect what's happened to Turkey with the earthquake? Well, thank you, Alan. The thing, it's interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to affect anything at all. Or maybe vice versa. How does the Turkey earthquake affect the Ukraine war? Turkey has not been abiding by the sanctions. All right. Thank you, Ben. I'll get to yours in a sec. Turkey has not been abiding by the sanctions. Turkey kind of wants to be the middleman between Ukraine and Russia, even though Turkey is a member of NATO. The Turks have, however, been providing the Bayraktars to Ukraine, those big honking drones that were so effective at the beginning of the war. I'm not sure in terms of other military equipment. My only concern would be if you've got such a disaster in Turkey, and I mean, it's a disaster. This is a horrific earthquake. The Turkish government is clearly going to be focusing on Turkey right now. And keep in mind, there's huge Turkish elections coming up in May for the parliament, the Congress, and the Turkish presidency. So all the more reason why the Turkish president and its government is going to be focusing on Turkey right now. So it might make Turkey less interested in focusing on things international. If Turkey were spending a lot of money on Ukraine, I'd say the money might be less. Thank you, Bonnie. I'm not convinced Turkey's spending a lot of money, So that would be my only question would be, is there a lot of aid anyway going from Turkey, and might that aid now have to be diverted back to Ukraine, to Turkey itself? That would be my only question. Ben, thank you, Ben. Did you see that a Ukrainian Tu-141 hit Russia today just outside of the city Kaluga? Okay, I saw a report. I didn't mention this only because the report came from a Russian governor or something claiming that, thank you for that. Who was that? Magical. Thank you. Magical photo. Claiming that a Ukrainian drone blew up not that far from Moscow. I don't know if it was 60 miles or what. It wasn't that far from Moscow, like southeast of Moscow. The thing is, because the source was a Russian governor or whatever, I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. So yes, I don't know. I mean, do we even have anything more on it now? I didn't. Anyway, it's if it's true, it's interesting because it means the Ukrainians are still trying to basically freak the Russians out. Now, actually, keep in mind, I guess one of the things Ukrainians can do. Think of all the air defenses and everything that had to go up in Moscow, right? The fact that all the Ukrainians really need to do is send drones that occasionally crash or blow up or something to Russian cities because it freaks the Russians out. And it makes the Russians have to spend more money and attention at home and not just on Ukraine. So now Russia has had to pay a lot of money and time and manpower making sure that Moscow's defenses are sufficient. Thank you, Ali. Which is something that you wouldn't think they'd have to worry about, right? Keeping Moscow safe. Of course, Moscow's safe from little old Ukraine. Not anymore, right? So my guess is, thank you, Bonnie, for that. My guess is that Ukraine did it, if they did it, to try to keep the pressure on the Russians so the Russians keep going, right? God, and they basically have to spend money and manpower and military supplies that they normally would be spending on Ukraine to beef up the troops, to beef up their cities at home. That's my guess. There were Didar. There were pictures last week or the week before of air defense systems being put up or additional ones on top of the Russian Defense Ministry, among others. There was a wonderful photo. The thing is, I don't know if it was photoshopped, so I didn't show you guys, but I'll tell you anyway. It was a wonderful photo of the Russian Defense Ministry where they did put this new surface-to-air missile system on top, like to blow things out of the sky that are coming at the Defense Ministry in Moscow. And the picture I saw, I don't know if it's real, but the picture I saw, the Russians reportedly put a camouflage tarp over the top of the weapon, a big, green camouflage top, except that, of course, it's on top of the Russian building. So it's not like the camouflage blends in. The top of the Russian building isn't camouflage. So it was just very funny. They were saying, Russian military excellence at its best. It made me chuckle. I'm sure NATO's sending relief as well, of course, to the Turks. Absolutely. Now, this is an excellent question from Martin DeYoung. Excellent question. Somebody mentioned this earlier in our Discord community. Discord.aravosis.com. Go check it. Actually, we'll go to the Discord afterwards and hang out a bit. Martin DeYoung says, if Sweden provides earthquake release to Turkey, could this make a difference to NATO? Yes. Specifically, what Martin means is, could it make a difference for Sweden's bid to join NATO? Because as you know, the Turks have been a real PITA in terms of saying, we're not going to let Sweden join because we're mad at them and all this stuff. I was thinking the Greeks have already offered a lot of help. The Greeks should offer almost everything they can in principle. Thank you, Hazel, for that, for the llama, and the Swedes should as well. I think, first of all, I mean, it'd be nice to help anyway because there are people in trouble, and we should help people if we can. Something like a disaster of this magnitude, but also being political, doesn't hurt. I mean, Sweden should do whatever it's can. I'm sure Sweden already sent help, but Sweden should do whatever it can. Yeah. I mean, because even though I would be very careful if I were in the Swedish government saying anything like this, because you don't want to look crass, but it can't, first of all, you should help anyway, but it can't hurt. It can't hurt. Now, whether the Turks in the end care, I don't know, but it can't hurt. It won't hurt, and it'll help to some degree. Greece, yes, I did see that Greece sent help as well. Yep. All right, what else we got? Remember, guys, you can submit questions via the Q&A link on TikTok or the super chat or just the regular chat questions as well. The spy balloon. Yeah, that was fun this weekend with the spy balloon. Who knows? I mean, I don't want to get too much into the balloons here. We thank you. Who's that? Netlin for the corgi and Tucker for the balloons. I don't want to get too much on the balloons in this show because it's not dealing with Ukraine. But the really sort of the big confusing thing is, I say it was interesting actually. We had somebody who says they're an electrical engineer, I believe, who was in my TikTok comments and is also a member of our Discord community that was saying that. Thank you, Graham, for that. Was saying that who is that? Peach Umbrella. Thank you. They believe that there's some kind of microwaves or something that satellites can't pick up, but the balloon being lower, because the balloon's only at 60 miles, right? Or excuse me, not 60 miles, 60,000 feet. 60,000 feet, even if you don't do feet. Airplanes fly from 35,000 to 45,000 feet. This thing was at 65,000. So it's not much above where airplanes fly, right? 30% higher, maybe, than where airplanes fly, maybe 50% higher, or twice as high, maybe. If he's right, then maybe there is something this balloon can do. But it did seem, I mean, I will say this, the Chinese use these balloons all over they've used them all over the world. They've got them flying all over Latin America too. And they flew them over the US before. We now know, interesting story that came out this afternoon. So we had heard this weekend a report that, I swear to God, I'll go back to Ukraine in a second, but everyone's mind is on this balloon. Thank you, Nick, for the rose. That China had flown 3 balloons over the U.S. during the Trump administration. And, well, Trump said it was fake information or something like that. Trump's top people said, what are you talking about? We didn't know anything about this, which is a much smarter response. One of the things you got to be careful with is just because you don't know something doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? It could have happened. So you want to be careful going, that's a lie, because maybe it's not a lie. Well, in this case, some Defense Department folks apparently came out, I guess, a top general or whatever, and said, yes, it was the head of NORAD. The head of NORAD. NORAD is the sort of space command we have that in out in California, out in Colorado. What was it? The mountain. I know the mountain name. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the mountain name. You guys know the name of the mountain. In Cheyenne Mountain, I think, in NORAD with the big cement doors. It's where the U.S. keeps an eye on the skies. Of all the threats from the skies, and the head of NORAD said today that in fact. There were 3 balloons that flew over the U.S. from China during the Trump administration. NORAD didn't catch it, which is really big. Yes, NORAD has the Santa tracker. That's right, Chris. That's exactly right. They do the Santa tracker every year. The Defense Department didn't catch it. 3 different balloons, and that basically said that's something we've got to work on because it was really embarrassing. So the reason the Trump folks didn't shoot it down is because they weren't even aware politically. I mean, because let's face it, we talk politics. Politically, that cuts kind of both ways. You can say, well, I didn't know about it, so I didn't shoot it down. But then the question is, why didn't you know about it, right? So in any case, interesting story, but let's get back to this. Now, I just forgot, I can't do Discord tonight I am doing some TikTok class today at 7 p.m. in my time in 10 minutes. I totally forgot about it. So, oh, hey from Ukraine. Hey, Holler in Ukraine. So I totally forgot, guys. I am going to have to pull the plug at 7 p.m., meaning in 9 minutes. So I forgot about that. I just got my notice coming up on my computer and I went, you're lying. This was refuted. I love trolls. I love you, trolls. You're lying. This was refuted. The commanding general of NORAD came out and said, it's true. We tracked 3 of them. Or excuse me, we know in retrospect there were 3. We totally missed it. It was embarrassing. It was bad. We've got to do better. Google it, that there were 3 Chinese balloons. This is by the way, this is also what's important about putting out the news and putting out the truth. You've got to give people enough information that they, like this story, for example, that they can go and back it up themselves. That's why it was important to remember it was the guy at NORAD. If I simply said, oh yeah, 3 balloons flew over Trump administration, you'd say, well, is that true? Right? You can now Google. The head of NORAD isn't going to lie. I mean, he's not going to lie about it, especially because he's admitting that they screwed up. But nonetheless, Lisa, hello, Lisa A. I was looking at radar maps and saw more balloons. Okay. Looking at radar maps and saw a balloon pop up this weekend near Africa as well. I have pictures of what I think is another balloon. Very well could be. There was a balloon near the U.S. There was another one. Thank you, Victor, for that. There was another, and Nick as well. There was another one over Latin America. And I don't know about elsewhere, but I wouldn't be surprised. Why not? Right? Why wouldn't they have them over other places? So very likely. But yeah, I've got this TikTok class at 7:00 that I signed up for so I can learn to do better TikTok videos, which felt important. But I just saw the classes for an hour and a half. And I was just like, seriously, an hour and a half at night? I feel like I'm doing, like I'm doing homework. It has homework too. I was like, oh God. All right. Let's not do more balloons since I've got to sign off at 7. Let's do more Ukraine. Well, I mean, what do you think of the warning from the United Nations Secretary General Guterres? Oh, thank you, Benji, for that. About we are at risk of entering a wider war. I'm getting anxious. I don't quite know what he meant by that. I think by wider war, I read that. I didn't talk about it because I thought it was a little weird. I wasn't quite sure if by a wider war he meant more parties to the war. This was the United Nations Secretary General Guterres said that we are at risk of a wider war now. And I just wasn't convinced what he meant by that. Like whether he meant more parties to the war. Thank you, Magical Photo, for that. Or whether he meant a wider war, meaning it gets bloodier and bigger and worse. Because I think that's what we're at risk of. The Russians are planning, we believe, a big offensive in the spring or soon. We believe the Ukrainians are planning a big offensive spring. We know Western tanks are going to be going to Ukraine. We worry that the Russians may be getting 300 or 500,000 more troops, right, to enter the war. I mean, well, if all of that happens, this does become a wider war in the sense of a much bigger war affecting more territory, affecting more people, right? We have the best trolls. The Russians are still freaking out. Hey, folks, remember, if you want to piss off the trolls, give me a gift on TikTok. Always like to bring that up when we get the Russian trolls. NATO is desperate. Well, I don't know. We're in the 11th and a half month of a 3-day war. So who was that? Give me the hat there. Thank you, 6 hours. So I don't know that NATO's the one that's desperate right now. I did see that. Yes, Otanbot is saying Switzerland is considering lifting its ban on exporting weapons to war zones due to the public and political pressure. Thank you, Annie, for the TikTok gift, for the money, so to speak, and Lexi and Chris and Magical. Oh, thanks. You guys were doing it because I mentioned the troll. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Well, so Switzerland is considering lifting its ban on sort of re-exporting into war zones. Thank you, 6 hour. And thank you, Nathan. One of the immediate needs has been the oh God, is it the Gepard? What is it? I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting now if it's artillery or an anti-aircraft system. Thank you, Grayson, for the hat there, that Ukraine is getting or wants, but it requires Swiss, and thank you, Frank and Nurse Bauer and von Budseed. But it requires the Swiss weapons to replenish it. Oh, thank you, Hazel. That's very generous of you. I know I recognize that motorcycle. Thank you for that. Wow. But it requires Swiss, the Swiss gun, the Leo. Is it the Leo? Okay. So, that would be a big deal right there. I know one of the things the Swiss are looking at possibly doing or talking about is selling their tank. Okay, the Swiss have, it said something like 100 tanks that they've got. I think they may even have more, but 100 Leopard tanks. I don't remember if they were Leopard 1s or Leopard tanks. They're Leopard tanks, and they're in storage, about to be decommissioned because the Swiss figured they didn't need them anymore. The Swiss are looking at, it's been being debated in Parliament, I guess, whether they can sell the tanks that they've got in storage. The German tanks, it's complicated. The German tanks the Swiss have in storage, whether they can sell them for a nominal cost, meaning not much, to third-party countries who want to give their own tanks to Ukraine. And this way, for example, if you've got Leopard tanks and you'd like to give some to Ukraine, but you say, hey, I can't afford to get rid of 20 of my tanks. I need them to defend my country. Switzerland says, well, hey, why don't you buy 20 of our Leopard tanks that we have extra? And I mean, if you want to give your 20 tanks to Ukraine, we have nothing to say about that. We're just selling you our tanks, right? So interesting idea there. Thank you, Crusher. That's a really interesting thing too, because that could help a lot in terms of the getting more tanks to Ukraine. Let's see if Switzerland's okay with it. They're trying to, I think the Swiss public opinion polls have been decent on this. They've been at least a majority of Swiss have been on board for some of these things, for basically trying to re-export their stuff. But that's a big deal for Switzerland and, all of that. So understandably. All right, I've got like another minute left, guys. Let me do a quick recap. And then, as I said, I apologize. I won't be able to do, and I'm a little short tonight. I won't be able to do the Discord because I've got a TikTok class I have to do at 7:00 in 1 minute for an hour and a half. And I'm not happy about this because I think I'm going to die. Thank you, Nathan and Benji. I mean, the idea of sitting in a class right now for an hour and a half is killing me. But nonetheless, it's supposed to help me do better videos. And I thought, you know what? For you all, especially you TikTokers, I'm doing this for you. Show you the map. Okay, I'm showing you the map. Here we go. Upside down Ukraine map. Yes, I'm doing it for you all. So, all right, guys. You know what? I'm not even going to do the summary tonight. We barely have any time. I mean, it's a TikTok class for creators, so I got a special invite for it. Thank you, Ellie, for that. And Hazel and everybody else. I appreciate the gifts. Well, guys, I will be back tomorrow night, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, moderators, for going after the trolls. The trolls were clearly a little insane tonight. They don't like it. Oh, grab him. Oh, there we go. Yeah, user whatever. You are so going to be, folks, make sure you report that user guy. The anti-Semitism, I draw the line at. I mean, I draw the line at a lot of stuff. But folks who throw, I'm not even Jewish, but folks that throw anti-Semitism on the screen, you're going to be, I mean, I realize it's probably a fake account anyway. I'm getting you thrown off of TikTok. I know people there. That shit doesn't fly. So no. You can be rude to us and everything else, but racism, sexism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, that crap doesn't fly. So folks, I grabbed a copy of that. I'm going to be sending that to my TikTok friends while I'm doing my TikTok class. So thank you all anyway. Have a good night, and I will see you all tomorrow. And then we can do, thank you, Dawn, for reporting. We can do we'll do the Discord tomorrow night after the show. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Hazel. All right, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. I apologize again for this class I've got to get to. But do check out my links and aravosis.com and the links in my TikTok profile. You'll find the Discord, the Patreon, all sorts of, the shop, all sorts of fun. All right. Okay, guys. See you. Thank you. Again, sorry. Burp.